Welcome, participants. Welcome back. I mean, exciting. We had like, nearly 180 of you registered early morning, and I know it'll come in and out. We started with history and politics, doubled around global relations. We discussed a lot about its interface with what's happening around the world, and super excited for our set of panelists today. We progress to our next panel, which is Speak Out Loud, Careers in Literature and the Arts. And I couldn't have asked for a very, very fab lineup of panelists today. So welcome. And I'm going to just go around introducing our panelists. We have with us Shobha Vishwanath. Shobha is a publishing director and co-founder of Krea Retail's company. She's passionate about picture books. She's a firm believer that reading should be for fun and that art enhances the reading experience. She has veered the direction of Krea Retail's to garner international reputation while at the same time making the books a national favorite across India. And Shobha, as a parent of the mid-90s, thank you so much for Krea Retail. We completely enjoyed it. I think there's not a day my daughter hasn't really enjoyed. So thank you so much for that journey. We move next to our next panelist, Mativanan Rajendran. Mati is the founder of Stray Factory. It's an independent film studio that works on international co-productions, and it's based out of India. The credits include Nirvana in Nasir and Freddy's Piano. Mati is a graduate of Industrial and Systems Engineering from Virginia Tech. So Mati, that's a story we need to hear. Thank you so much. And thanks for such passionate and impact-based stories that come out of your studio. We're really delighted to have you with us. Joined by Devki. Devki is from the Canadian International School, and she teaches arts at the Canadian International School. And I have personally seen a school that's really grown in stature over the last decade. And Devki is also the founder and trustee of Savita NGO, and she is the creative director at the Savita Center of Arts for the Arts. And Devki Rao has been an art educationist for more than 20 years, and art being a passion of hers throughout her academic career. She's participated in arts exhibitions and workshops, both at the national and regional level. Thank you so much, Devki, for joining us and for bringing, the kind of perspectives that you'll actually bring to this panel. We're joined by our very own Dr. Akila Ramnarayan. Dr. Akila is the Divisional Chair of Literature and the Arts at Krea University, and she's also curator of Vaini, the Ideas Place. Akila and I have a lot of fun doing a lot of stuff for Vaini. She has a PhD from the Ohio State University, and she won the Sangeet Natak Academy Ustad Bismillah Khan Yuva Puraskar in 2014. So thank you, Akila. Thank you for joining us. And she is a bundle of energy and enthusiasm, and waiting to hear from you, Akila. Again, from the Krea family, we are joined by Dr. Sumitra Ranganathan. She's the Senior Assistant Professor of Literature and Arts within the Humanities and Social Sciences. And Dr. Sumitra has a PhD in music from the University of California. And wait for it, she also has an MS in Systems and Information Systems and an MSc in Physics as well. So that's as truly interdisciplinary as you can hear today. She transitioned to humanities after 16 years as an e-commerce specialist. So thank you so much. It's quite an exciting panel we have here, and I know there's a lot of creative aspirations and juices that will run. And to me, I think personally, this is a very important panel of the 8 that we are hosting, only because I think the whole aspect of creative expressions, the fact that every panelist that we have spoken to has not, I don't think anybody has not mentioned creativity as one of the key skills that they will look for when they actually hire. And that's, I think, says a lot about not just the literature and the arts, but the whole process, the whole creative process that we're looking at in Krea. And thank you, panelists, for joining us. I'm going to start the first kind of round a bit about asking, talking about you, your work, because all of you come from diverse fields, whether it's writing, whether that's films, and that's publishing, curating, music, and all of that. But what is really exciting about the work that you do, and what's really so motivating for you in on a daily basis with what you do. Shobha, if we could start with you, please.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Kala, for having me on this panel. And hi, Akhila and Mati. Nice to see you guys after a long time. Three Chennaiites. I don't know where Sumitra and Devaki are based. So anyway, it's good to be here. I was very amused by your question that you had posted on the email that said, what is it that makes you whatever, get up in the morning and go to work, or what is it that excites you? And yeah, this is our 25th year at Krea Details, and in June Krea turns 25, and for me, it just seems like we started it yesterday, you know, and perhaps that in itself speaks for the newness of the job every day that we go to work. There is the aspect when you run a business, there are two aspects to it, especially in terms of publishing, where there is the creative side and there is the business side. Luckily for me, I'm not too involved with the business aspect of it, although I know that we'll speak about it later. And so this process of creation is the all-time high, I think, you know, whether it's through, it's putting a picture book together or an audiobook together, or singing a new kriti in a new way, or, you know, choreographing a small piece of dance, or, you know, working with an illustrator and bringing the words come out alive through pictures. This is what continues to motivate me. And of course, when you put your heart and soul into something, it definitely reflects in the end product that you bring out. And of course, whether of all the books that we've created and we continue to create, when the end user is the child, or is the parent who buys it for the child, who says it, I know my name is Madhavi, you know, I'm from Alapi, then you say, my God, it is, we have impacted lives in that sense. And therefore, it's not just the creative process that is definitely fulfilling, but at the end of it, that there is your audience or your receiver or your consumer who enjoys it as much, if not more than how much you enjoyed creating it. So this is in a nutshell, and you said it rightly. I mean, it's I really think that even in these dreadful pandemic days, when even if I have to create a small column outside my porch, that, you know, gives me a little high, which carries me probably through for the next few hours of the day. So there is, I don't know what it is about the act of creating something that does this to us, that is such a shot in the arm and such a shot in life itself, you know, that helps us carry us forward. Yeah, so that's me for you.
Thanks. Mati, yeah, would love to hear from you.
Sure. So, I mean, first of all, again, lovely to see everybody here. Again, Shobha and Akhil, after so long. Lovely to see you all. I think when I think about what excites me the most, I guess it is probably this harmonization of people. I mean, there are so many talented people who are you always get to meet. And it's when you meet them, you are inspired, you are excited. And I think it's sort of creative spaces tend to be this infectious spaces, right? So you could even walk into a VFX studio and then just how passionately someone just trying to remove one little line, you're like, wow, this is something. So I think one definitely is this harmonization of all of the different people you get to meet. I think besides that, it's also, especially in, I guess, for me personally, from, let's say it's film or something, it's a little bit about, you know, there's always a ceiling about the kind of films or things you could make. And when you get to challenge that, it's really fun, right? And for example, when someone says, oh, this is a small Tamil regional film, what can it do? Then you're like, no, I'm going to do something. So I think there's this constant the thing of trying to break out and do something. And I think that sort of like keeps you driven to keep creating more and more.
That's exciting. Yeah, I quite like that. So the one is, you know, how do you put it out to this whole area of challenging, which is interesting. Devki, your, just your work and the exciting part of what you do.
So I'm a painter to start with. and I chose to be a teacher because I had to make a living, okay, that time. But later
Mhm.
on, I realized art is one of the channels which runs like a bloodline through all the professions, which not many people are aware of. And they think art as a hobby, art as a separate entity altogether. They never think about art as an integral part of everything, single thing what we do around us. So that is something which excites me because I'm the founder of Sevita, and Sevita is all about promoting, preserving, and sustaining the folk arts of India. So,
Mhm.
first thing is realizing the treasure what we have in India and bringing in that awareness. And eventually, when we thought about doing the programs and workshops in different institutes and schools, we realized they didn't know what is art. They didn't know what is a folk art, what is a contemporary art, or they didn't have a clue of what is a art education itself. How important it is a part of every child who's growing up, and how it kind of um, develops a identity for them. It teaches you a lot of skills. So that kind of made me start with an NGO, which eventually gave us opening to Sevita Center for Arts. So wherein we bring in the awareness of arts in for every age. We don't have any age limit there. So we do
Mhm.
right from little children to 70, 80-year-olds who come there for mindfulness, who have a lot of things going on in their mind. They don't know where to focus, or maybe just to calm down, take a break, introspect, okay, then
Mhm.
refocus. So art has helped in a lot of ways, and different professions. I will talk about it later, but
Thank you.
is an integral part which a lot of the parents, first thing the parents need to realize that, okay, you cannot take out art from your sciences or maths or other things. You need to be exposed to art, you need to explore art. I wouldn't say only visual art, I mean every kind of art, and that brings in that extra confidence and that sense of achievement in the students. And I think that is something which excites me. If you talk to me as an educationist, yes,
Mm.
I do paint. I started pursuing my masters after 25 years, but I have experienced a lot of workshops and this and that and all. But today I mainly focus to connect with the parents,
Mm.
mainly to talk to the parents, because the awareness has to start with the parents, not only with the teachers, and then it kind of shifts to the students. So we need to change a mind. There has to be a mind shift, which will happen gradually, and it is happening. That's a good thing.
Great. That's great because I'm glad as well because I know we have close to 100 plus 120 odd participants, and we do have tend to have a very healthy mix of young students, parents, and counselors in the audience. I'm sure it's going to be quite interesting.
Yes.
Akila, could we hear from you?
You, Kala, thank you so much for organizing this. I know you, Careers and Outreach, have been working night and day to pull off this fantastic opportunity to interact with students. So thank you so much for doing this, and parents if they're watching. And thank you all, whoever is here, for coming. And thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here with these amazing panelists. I don't know you, Devaki, but I just feel very inspired by what you just said about the arts being a bloodline that runs through all disciplines and all knowledge domains. So really excited to be here with the rest who I know well. So I won't name you, but it's a pleasure. What wakes me up in the morning really is the opportunity to learn, and I think learning has become a focus for me individually, and then that's also why I sort of re-entered academic life after staying away from it for 8 years. And learning in different domains. I think Mati sort of alluded to this, and Shobha in a different way, saying that your tasks every day can range from, from sweeping the stage, as we say in theatre, to, ideating large projects and so on. So I think the learning curve and the agility with which you have to learn in the 21st century, that's what gets me up in the morning. Uh, I started off as a scholar. I dabbled a little bit. Music and poetry are my first loves, but my training is as a scholar. I studied an obscure and obfuscating discipline called post-colonial studies in the English department at Ohio State. But it taught me tools, very important tools such as critical thinking, research, the capacity to reflect, and the capacity to be with a big problem or question for a long time. And so that learning happened in that part of the journey. And then I learned to teach and then have to communicate some of these things to the rest of the world. I'm making a music album after so many years of not doing anything about my music. And that's teaching me so much about working in the studio, working with collaborators. As a writer, you're all on your own, but collaborating on a piece of art, it involves technology, it involves other people's voices, creativities. How can you bring it all together? So that's another thing. And I should mention, I teach at Krea, and that continues to be a huge learning, especially after the pandemic. We're all online. We're learning to grapple with technologies and try to create a classroom experience that's vibrant for students. And finally, as an administrator, my God, I mean, it's thankless, it's backbreaking. Some days I don't want to wake up in the morning and I'm not excited, to be absolutely frank. But I have learned so much. I know I'm going to look back on this time and say, when was I, I never thought I was going to be the chair of a division in a university. And, it's mind-boggling for me that I'm here actually. But I have incredible colleagues. I'm learning about other domains. And it reminds me of my 6 years in tech when I was an L&D, a learning and development specialist in some ways, because I was thrown into an environment where I knew nothing of the domain. And I had to, land on my feet and learn to be useful to the organization. And in Krea now, the particular challenge is starting everything from the ground up and facing this monumental challenge of the pandemic after, 1 year of being in existence. And, that's something that keeps me awake at night and, often is a source of anxiety, but it's also a source of great opportunity and solidarity, collaboration, strength. So I think that's me. That's it.
Yeah. Thanks,
So good
Akila.
to be
Thank
here.
you so much.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much. And yeah, I mean, you did bring some very important points there, which is about collaboration, this whole thing about being agile and the ability to kind of do every task. So I think, that's amazing what you brought up. Sumitra, we could hear a bit from you.
Yes. Hello, everybody. I'm very excited to be here. And I just have to say that I remember the moment when Kara Details came out. So I'm really, and I look forward to learning about every one of you. Just to say that, I was just thinking to myself, what sort of connects this slightly crazy existence of mine? I mean, I've moved so many domains. I think it is this connection between the empirical world, the world of experience and phenomena, and thinking theoretically about it. So I think, whether as a physicist becoming excited about nature and, trying to think theoretically about that, certainly as a computer person, I've designed so many systems, written so much code, but it's that fascination with the human situation often, and how does one think about it? And then when it comes to music, I work on Hindustani music, and I work with communities in rural Bihar and Banaras and Kolkata. So it's Drupad, which I work on, and it's a very old practice. It's an endangered practice, but the music doesn't come by itself. And esoteric classical music is still a practice of everyday life, and that really thinking through that. The connection between the empirical world, human response, and thinking with, the tools that something like a degree in music or a degree in computer science or what have you, allow you to connect with these things. I think that is sort of the connecting story. And that also makes me really very excited about being a teacher, because the one thing that I realized that I don't know, I don't get bored. almost every situation interests me. So I don't know whether it's just my lack of discrimination or whatever, but it's that I think is one of the things that sort of making these connections has given me. And the classroom has been enormously enriching because, it is really a place where you create with the student. And so we'll just leave it at that.
Thanks, Sumitra. And yeah, thank you so much. What is amazing is that if I had a frequency meter for passion, that would have just like hit the roof, because each one of you, with the absolute passion with which you come into talk about what you do, and despite all the challenges. So I want to really take this to the next level and the next round. Really, I want to start with you, Mati. I want to ask you this. So there is a lot of passion to be in the arts, but here is a common myth where many young graduates who want to kind of nominate arts and literature, and there's often faced with questions from parents about, is that going to be a stable career? So really it's, is it true or is it not true? Is it a myth that the creative arts is not for people who are looking to make any kind of profit, and it's only for those with a passion? So I just want to understand a bit about this from your perspective, Mati.
Sure. So, I mean, when I got your questions yesterday, I spent a lot of time on this question, and it took me to some really deep, dark places as well. Because I think I was reflecting on, generally the different steps that, you take towards finally, realizing this passion profit equation. So just a quick background there. So of course, I've always had two jobs or two things. I've always been in the arts, and I've always been a user experience designer, which is thanks to my master's in industrial engineering. And it's always been like, a tug of war. I like trying to do both all the time. So I just come from then. I try to distill this entire thing to a little bit of an equation and to see whether that will help. So the first part, I think actually, and especially for the parents also in the room, I guess, I think it's important for that first burst of creative work that you're doing to just dive deep and not really think of profit. I think there really has to be that one period of total expansion where you're just just really exploring, and you are in essence really trying to find what is unique about your voice. Be it you're a writer, you're a director, whatever be the case, there has to be that period where you're just diving without thinking about profit. I think during this time, an important piece is to definitely seek sustainability, though, because that's where I think some of like I have totally squandered, like sometimes just going so deep, and you're like, oh my God, I've got no money at all. Where am I going? What's happening? Right? So it's like, and I don't want to ask my dad for anything. It's just embarrassing. You don't want to be in those positions. So I think being sustainable is really important. So I think first step, definitely seeking sustainability and just diving deep. And I think hopefully parents, and my parents did to a certain extent, allow me to dive deep enough. So that's one important piece. The second, I think, is I just want to stress on the voice part again. I think we sometimes overrate. I mean, skills are like sometimes overrated. It's like, learn this skill, learn editing, learn, especially I'm talking about film. You have to learn editing, you have to learn VFX, you have to learn, which camera, all of that is, I mean, sometimes overrated. It's really what makes you profitable, or makes you, I mean, more than profitable, gives value, is your voice, right? So the more unique and more how you're able to own your voice, I think it helps. I just think of A.R. Rahman sometimes, and I think about, how he's able to, take Sufi influences, his times as being a roadie, and then he just sort of synthesized that into a very, very unique voice that nobody else had. And I think taking that time would be great. The other 2 points, I think, are one, I mean, I read this somewhere, and I think it's fairly true, even if I think about my life. So the most famous artists are not only popular because of their art, but because of their friends. And I think it's fairly true. Having a good network of people is phenomenally important in the creative space for you to be profitable down the line. Like, you have to build that network, right? And I think that's super important. And the last little piece there is, I think there has to be a willingness to adapt. In the sense that I started off doing theater, acting, then started directing theater, and then now I'm very comfortable being a producer because I found my spot. I don't think I have lost out on what I wanted to do. I think I've been willing to adapt to find something. So I think if I have to distill this equation of passion and profit, I think it's first seeking sustainability and diving deep initially. Second is being able to really own that voice. Third is to be able to find that network. And fourth is, what was the fourth? Having the willingness to adapt. So that's my equation that I came up with at 12 o'clock last night.
Fantastic. That's great work overnight. And we just ran a poll with the audience to understand the composition, and delighted there is about 80% is students who signed up for this. So students, you got a lot of notes to take back, and the rest being parents and counselors as well. So be interesting. Devaki, if I could have your thoughts on this, please, especially as an educator who talks to parents all the time.
Yes. Kala, can you just repeat the question, because I want to go with the point by point here.
Yes, absolutely. So my question was really about, this myth about that arts is a lot of passion, but is there any profit in it? And how do we battle this whole thing about parents? So I don't think it's about, profit as in it being like a personal profit or whatever, but at the end of the day, is it like a stable career? And those kind of questions keep coming up. So I meant more from that angle is often what we keep getting these questions. So your thoughts on that?
Okay. Fantastic question, because this is something which all the parents are worried about all the time, and that kind of influences their decision making. I would say creativity is something like Mati said. We need to dive into it deeper, develop the skill like a hardcore student, learn every skill possible, every angle. But that is not enough, because you need to learn. There are a lot of scaffolding which happens with it. If suppose I'm a painter, but I'm really good in painting, but I don't know how to speak, I don't know how to communicate, I don't know how to create a network, and I don't know how to develop those extra skills which can help me be flexible to work with any industry. Today, each and every industry needs a creative person. They cannot think within the box. They have to think outside the box. And that comes only when you experience art in every which way possible. So having a skill is one thing, but how would you see? For me, when you're learning an art, learn as a passion, but eventually you need to think about as an entrepreneur. You are an entrepreneur, you are a product, okay? We have so many different products, but the impression what we get by looking at advertisements, the packing, the way they reach out, they kind of influence you to make a critical decision to go and buy it. The same thing applies to any student, any artist coming from various profession. It is not only about creating or having that brilliant passion and creating amazing art pieces. It will not sell. You need to know how to scaffold and start. Be a learner for your entire life. Learn new skills. Have network is something which Mati said, and I totally connect to that. And I believe that that has to be like a integral part of any artist who is learning a course. They should have these extra subjects where they know how to communicate, how to sell, how to work with different industries, how to be flexible enough to use your creativity in various like sciences or maths, or even scientists need it. So even medical profession needs something in your operation theater. You need a product. Everything which is around us, right from oximeter to anything and everything, there has been a designer who has put it on the paper, and then it has come out as a product. So there is integral part of it with different science and math and whatever it is. So what I feel is, never take your passion just very lightly as a hobby. Take it as something which you love to do it, but it can make a living also. It can give you that hike, and maybe the high in your life where you feel happy that you are taking care of your passion, but you're also making a living. So it kind of balances that, and that is very important for today's children especially to understand. You cannot think only art as a separate thing.
Yeah, to lose that whole myopic thing, to look at it in a little bit more broad-based. Sumitra, some of your thoughts on this, and also, maybe to some extent reflecting more broadly within the literature and the arts realm.
Yeah, no, actually, I resonated with a lot of what I heard from both Mati and from Devaki. You know, I think risk is something that one takes. You know, when there is passion involved, there's risk involved, usually. So I think with the arts, it's not really any different. So there is this question of investing in something, of taking that amount of risk to actually commit some, many years to it sometimes. But at the same time, I would always think that sustainability of making sure that any other responsibilities you have are served. So I actually, the starving musician is something that, it's a very common idea. But I'll tell you something, having spent some time with starving musicians, it's nobody wants to starve. It's a fact. So I think there is a lot involved in thinking pragmatically, in equipping you, in understanding that there are multiple things to actually taking a passion and making it viable to be one of your main portfolios. Now, if that doesn't happen, I'm actually answering a question that's also in the chat box. It's not unusual that people do more than one thing. And this has historically been true. You'd be surprised to know that some of the most amazing musicians were army generals. So I mean, we shouldn't have this idea that art is something practiced in a vacuum. It is connected to other things. The second thing is, very pragmatically speaking, in order to be an artist, there are many other things involved. And I think when we set up an education program, when we even design our global arts program and the literature program, we've really had to think through this. The connection, the integral connections that art has to other domains, and what else art needs in order to sustain itself as a domain. Both these aspects are very important.
Very, very interesting, Sumitra. And we're going to come to a couple of things that you mentioned there in terms of the interface across other domains, as well as how the teaching of arts is structured. Shobha, could we have some of your reflections and thoughts on that, please?
So when this question was addressed in the email, and I was thinking, if we are 5 of us, surely we would have covered the passion and the profitability, everything that needs to be said about it. But having listened to, Mati and Devaki and also Sumitra, see, art can be approached as art for art's sake. That if I'm a musician, my happiest is singing or performing or playing my sitar or veena or whatever it is. And there is really nothing else that I can find my happiness with. So it's art for art's sake. And I am in a place where perhaps I don't have the wherewithal or even an interest, for that matter, to hawk my art or to sell my art or to be even bothered with an audience, actually. That I am involved in the pursuit of art for the sake of art. There's art for art. Then there's art as vocation, like Mati mentioned. So I am an artist, and then there's somebody who takes care of me, or I have another job which supports my vocation. And then there's art as business, as something that sustains you. Through the art itself sustains you, and so you build a business or you build a profitability around it. But if you look at the word profit itself, I would say art for art's sake. True, Sumitra, I mean, talk to the starving musician and nobody wants to starve. That's true. But you ask them to do something else and they're incapable of it. I know so many, even my generation of musicians who are just such fabulous musicians, but they're not connected with this world of networking and packaging and marketing and all of that. But given that this forum or this panel is addressing younger people, maybe that is a skill, that art for art's sake is a diminishing domain, that it's art as vocation and art as business. So in that sense, I would say, yes, what all of you said is true. how does one make your passion profitable? You have to be, all passions cannot be profitable, I think. I mean, we are 25 years old, and if profitability is measured by how much money you have in your bank, then we are far from profitable. But we are profitable because we've impacted lives. We have so many people who know about us. The brand is so big. But if profitability is only about money, no, we are failures, 100%. Because there is really, especially if let a pandemic hit you, and I mean, the reserves in the bank do not even last you probably 6 months. So it is the manner in which we define this business of profitability. And maybe I am being a little bit philosophical here, but given that we are speaking about the arts, I think one can't keep that aside. So if you take somebody like my husband, for instance, who runs the business end of all that is Curry Details and Curry Park, he's also a musician, and he sits every morning and he does his riyaz, and there is nobody to listen to except me when I'm cooking, and he doesn't care about it really. And that's art for art's sake. And that's so important for him to be in touch with, for him to do this end of it with joy and with profitability. No, I don't know if I made sense, but
I'm sure we're going to talk about this a little bit more in so many other contexts. And I know we've kind of now looked at arts from just that realm. Akhila, I just wanted your thoughts a little bit more. And I also wanted, given the whole writing, the area of writing, and also contextualize this in terms of the broader literature and the arts, what we do at Krea. Your thoughts on some of this?
Sure.
The career?
Can you hear me this time?
Yeah.
So I just wanted to quickly mention that, speaking of people we associate with art for art's sake, apparently Pablo Picasso was somebody who's an expert networker, and it's because of the networking that his art is so famous today. So you never know, right? People you think were in some garret or attic or some basement, cutting off their ears, may have actually been. So we have these myths also of who or what an artist is or a writer is, and usually those myths don't hold up if you go up close. Everybody has to, live, survive, sustain, as Matias said.
Some people have generous brothers. Sorry.
that can also be there. No, you need support. You need community support sometimes to do what you need to do. But what I wanted to say more is, if you're really good at what you do, and getting good there's lots of books out there about this, lots of research about this. Getting good at something requires something called deliberate practice, really working at something. I think if you get really good at what you do, I'll give you an example. I have a friend named Saloni Sinha, who's a visual designer. She works at a tech company, and then works at a premium design company, which is based, the India office is in Bangalore, Frog Design. She's somebody who sketches every day in her sketchbook. I mean, Shobha's talking about her husband singing every day. She has a sketchbook and she sketches every day, but she also works as a designer, and she also works for clients and making logos and other kinds of things. But there's a way in which there's a continuum that she's built over her illustrations and her paintings and her profession. So that the two can reinforce each other very beautifully. And I think Mati will agree with this, that, in some ways you get ideas because you're involved in more than one thing. It's not just a matter of having two jobs. It's that you're much more creative when you're, and this is an advantage, that if you get really good at what you do, right, and you just keep working at it, one day those leaps don't happen. It's not linear, progress. In anything that you do, and even progress is overrated as a construct. But I'm just saying that, at different times, you'll make that jump. You'll find your place in the universe, and if you're working towards that, things will fall into place. And, and that's what we want to communicate with the program that we have. It's not a program in specific skills like screenwriting or sculpture or film. What we're trying to create is a broad-based approach to the arts that allows you to explore different pathways that a degree in the arts or in literature can take you to. You can intervene in any domain or sphere that you want with that degree, because you're getting that liberal arts approach. And that's across the arts and sciences at Krea. So in that way, literature and arts is not so different from any of the other majors or disciplines. So I'll end on that note.
Yeah.
Hope I
No,
answered
thanks,
the question.
Akila. While I have you, and I know that everybody, and I really want to touch on this, the third P of the purpose, and hence, does it also mean that to serve in the arts, for somebody working in the art space, you kind of have to marry, one end is really the passion, but it's about a larger purpose. And that's usually, is that something do I see that across all of you on this panel? Because you're talking about putting what you love and what you do for something else. And is that something very typical of young graduates that you think choose the space, or is that something that's expected of them? It's about this whole about your writing, your passion for writing, or you're making films or creating art. Is this about serving a purpose for community or otherwise? Akila, I'll wait for your, sorry.
Okay, so the scholar in me wants to question this notion of purpose.
Yeah.
And tie it to the Judeo-Christian work ethic. So I'm not a huge fan of purpose. I actually like being a loafer. My ideal life is just standing outside a tea shop and drinking tea and watching the world rag past. So, but higher purpose, I would say, or a larger purpose outside the arts. I don't think you can work like that. I don't think you can work like that as a scientist. I don't think you can work like that. You can. I would say, look around you and develop curiosity. To me, curiosity is more interesting than purpose, because if you're curious, you'll notice what's wrong, or what could be better, and this is across the board. And you'll notice, what can be refined, or what needs to change in the moment, given the demands of the time. So I think that developing that curiosity is what you need. You need as an artist, and generally as a human being who has to survive the world in which we live. Because unless you keep your eyes open to possibilities all around you, you're just going to be in your own silo, working on things that people don't care about, right? And then, as both I think Devaki and Shobha talked about, you might fashion something fantastic, but then nobody know about it. So how do you walk that amazing thing that you've done to people? I mean, speaking of networking and tying this notion of purpose or curiosity or any of it to people paying attention. You have to. It's not about, for me, it's not so much about art for art's sake, but that if you find a way to make life better, you need to get it to the people who can do something about it. And you have to work towards that. So I'll end with that.
Sure, thanks. Mati, I wanted to kind of direct this next to you. So with your work, which talks about so many important elements, I mean, you could kind of work in any other creative writing space, but you kind of looking at this whole filmmaking and writing for certain impact that you want to get. So is that part of what you believe, your philosophy of the arts?
Great question, of course, again. I think one of the things that, again, when I was thinking about it yesterday, and I was thinking about this purpose, I mean, the purpose, and of course, it gets very, very deep. Just as from personal example, so like every other day, we have a lot of pitches, a lot of people coming and asking, talking about, the films they want to make. And it always puts me in an odd position because, to put a film together, it's a lot of work. We're talking about 200, 300, sometimes even 500,000 people who are going from the accountant. It's overrated to think that one director is making all of this, right? So many people are going to come together. So for me, sometimes that purpose is in the process because, to bring in so many people, is your idea something that I have to put 100 people, at risk of? If it's just some whim of expression, then I feel less inclined, right? Immediately. I feel like, please, I want the creator to respect the fact that, everybody's going to come together for that. That's one part of it. But as far as the process goes, just to give you an example, very recently we produced a short as well. This is for GIZ, the organization from Germany. So they, in that, it was called Be Selvi and Daughters. It was a film about female entrepreneurship. Now, of course, now we can go ahead, and make a film about female entrepreneurship and then hope that, thousands of people are going to watch this short film and then suddenly change. But I know that's not completely true. Of course, it can inspire a little bit, that's fine. But the process was important to us. So we did it with an 80% crew, all-woman crew, and then made sure that, now from our contribution, I would think would be that now a lot of the girls and women who worked on the film would now have more show reels they would have. They would also be able to showcase a piece of work which we finally managed to take to quite a few good festivals as well. So somewhere the purpose of female entrepreneurship translated to the process as well. So I think purpose and process are connected. And I think that's probably a way that I would like to approach it.
Yeah, very, very well, very nicely put. And I think, yeah, that's definitely a very interesting perspective. Yeah, Devki, your thoughts around, because I asked you that, one, you're an educator there at one of India's premier international schools, and you also run a trust in the arts. So how much is the purpose interwoven into your passion for the arts?
Purpose, I would take it as a responsibility, Kala. Artists have a big responsibility because I have done a lot of projects with my students as something called contextual learning, and we did a lot of research. We did realize that our nation is such which has a mixed culture and people coming from various different backgrounds. Some of them are illiterates. Each state has a different language, so not all people can read all the languages. So what is the best thing what we can do is the visuals, right? So going back to the time when I was interviewed, I was asked a very important question. They're like, if you have students who don't know English, how will you teach art? And my answer was, art in itself is a language. We don't need another language. So that kind of was something which I was holding very close to my heart. And we did a lot of murals, even in women and child welfare, where we did not use any literal things. We use only visuals. So it was for those people, those women, those families who are maybe not fortunate enough to be educated. But definitely we did children see, children feel, children, can understand things just with the visuals. Or even we have painted under the flyover with the students group, because the entire planning was done by the students, and I gave them the objective. If somebody cannot read, if you're writing something as a message, how would you come up with something as a message? And I will go back to World War I and World War II, where the artists were forced to create posters as propaganda to force people to get into the wars. There came a point where the artist said, no, this is not right, and we don't want to do it. So they believed in peace, but political game was such that they were forced to do posters and paintings and hoardings. So when the revolution, the riot happened, and the artist said, no, we're going to give a stop, because as artists we have a responsibility of thinking about solving the problem, not by creating more. So that is where a lot of people started thinking how art can be of a big purpose, or a high purpose. So today, if you see a lot of the videos, I remember the videos which used to come on Doordarshan, saving the tree, or it could be also, a lot of things which were without any dialogues. It was only the imagery, the illustrations, and it is still so close to my heart, and it is stuck there. I know that we have to save tree. It is, important. So I feel the art definitely has a high purpose and responsibility.
Thanks, Devki. Yeah, that's quite an interesting take on that. Shobha, we'll get your reflections on this before we move to the next round of just exploring how art kind of interfaces with other areas. So your thoughts, Shobha, around the purpose bit?
I sort of tend to agree with Akhila here. I don't think that should be the approach to art at all. If I can take the example of Curry Details itself, we we started the publishing house, or we started creating audiobooks just as an expression of our own creativity, as well as if it serves a purpose, it is, what does one say, it is an enjoyable experience for the child. Now, where the purpose emerged is down the road, where we found that the audiobooks themselves could be used to create a language pedagogy. And that came about organically. It was not designed in my first book that we published. The first book that came out was just for the joy and experience of taking a story and getting it narrated by a fabulous voice, putting these illustrations and these fabulous songs and music together. And then we discovered along the way that this story or these stories could be used as a pedagogical tool to learn the English language. And therefore the purpose emerged. And then another company was formed, which was the Karadi Path Education Company. So we never started out with, we need to do something or for someone. If at all, it was born out of a very selfish need that my children were very, very small and very young, and they didn't have audiobooks to listen to. And we thought we've got enough resources within the family to create something like this. And that's where what started. And that was a passion, because everyone loved to sing and make music. And then we had these fabulous narrators. So I would not approach art with a purpose in mind, or with a purpose as the end goal. The purpose happens, it emerges organically, and then that's a better way to look at it, I think.
That's probably not just silo to the art itself. That whole purpose kind of could emerge for any area.
That's true.
That's interesting. And then it's quite, as I said, it's quite kind of diverse across the different experiences and the angles that you're talking about. Akila today is just talking about observing people and the curiosity bit, but it's really talking about investing in the process. So it's different things that are coming together. Sumitra, I really wanted your thoughts next to start off this particular round about this whole space of literature and the arts. Is the creative space very insulated? Is it about creative people kind of talking to other creative people? How much does this interface with other areas of sociology, for instance, or psychology, the environmental studies? And how do you see creative arts or students of literature and the arts really interact? Where is that interface happening with other discipline areas, if you see that happening at all? Sumitra, if we could.
That's a hugely important question, Kala, and something that really as a group we thought a lot about. And so this really brings me back to how we even thought about the program in arts and literature at Krea. So I'd say that it's that both sides of things. There's one thing that to me really makes the arts stand out. That is the capacity for empathy and emotional connection. I won't even say empathy, because, if you take away emotion and expression of emotion, it's very difficult to talk about art. So in that sense, I think the arts, and I'm using arts as a sort of a more broader thing, literature and the arts, there is a very fundamental channel that it opens up in humans and in response to anything that happens. And therefore, I think maybe, without sounding like a liberal arts champion, which I am, I think that's why education in the arts can be very fundamental as a connective tissue in general in education. Okay, so that's about one aspect of it. Now, can you learn the arts in isolation? No, I don't believe so. In fact, you need to understand social context. You need to understand physiology. You don't have to understand everything, but these are all the dimensions that actually connect with the arts as a practice. So right from cognition, biology, to how things work, even the science of the arts, definitely to the socio-historical context in which particular art forms emerge as responses in society, to the function that the arts play. Whether it's in the context of ritual, or in the context of entertainment, in the context of being alive, in the context of expressing emotion, of just staying alive. But it is context, and social context matters, and very importantly the politics, the arts, whether it's race, gender, caste, class, response to colonialization, to domination. The politics and power are, these are things that the arts, they're certainly not removed from. And it is very important to understand those things when you examine an art form, when you're an artist yourself. And it also then relates to how the arts relates to advocacy, or how the arts can become a mechanism for change. So I know I've sort of given you a broad answer, but that's why you can't really, while arts for art's sake is a huge part of being an artist, it really doesn't happen in isolation. And I think when you think of arts education, you do think of this gamut of possibilities.
Yeah, fabulous. Yes, absolutely. And Devki, you tend to agree to some of that in terms of, and I ask that wearing your hat as an educator as well, that you can't really introduce students to literature and the arts in isolation, cutting them off from others. And before you proceed, I just also want to share, we ran a poll amongst our student audience listening in, asking them, what are you most passionate about using your communication and creative skills, just working from, and the topmost is that they want to talk about societal issues, environmental concerns, politics and policy, and then least about economic and business. So there is definitely, I guess there is a feeling that there are some aspects of societies that interweaves very well. Devki, your thoughts about this whole interface of arts and literature with other areas?
See, art teaches you all the skills, okay, right from speaking, because I teach IB and IGCSE. So IB course, when I started learning more deeper about it, it says art or becoming an artist is not an independent, isolated thing, because you need to develop all the skills possible. So you need to know how to talk about art, write about art, critically analyze the art, and eventually make a decision on it. So introspection is very important. And as we are our life has been a copy paste right from the beginning. So copy paste is something which starts from your home, your culture, your society, and your community, your nation, whatever. So we cannot isolate, and everything is connected. Everything is connected, right from your food to your language, the way you behave. I feel there is that line which can be drawn through and through. So you cannot say art is an independent entity. It is a part of your entire learning process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks. Akhila?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I got a tad distracted because I'm answering a question on how to stand up for your passion in the arts. So yeah,
That's something we're going to ask. Yeah. Anyway, yeah.
So this is about the arts connecting to other areas, right? So I can't imagine a world in which we don't all work together. It's not just the arts and literature, though this question comes up, what is the relevance of the arts? I think I suspect we've inherited this from the West. In sort of South Asian thinking, there wasn't this notion that the artist was just some sort of a, outcast or reject or some minority. Sumitra is shaking her head, right? I mean, artists were valued and they had their place in society. So, and we all learn from each other. There is no way. Take the example of a writer like Atul Gawande. He's a surgeon. Okay, he's been writing for the New Yorker, which is like the acme of publication for people who are in literature and who are writers, right? If you get an article in the New Yorker, it's like you've arrived on the top of Mount Everest, right? Atul Gawande has cut his teeth on writing for the New Yorker and being a surgeon at the same time. And he's written about medicine, right? And he's written this fantastic book about what it means to be old in America and in India. And it's a book that's written, it's got a writerly focus, the book, but it also comes back with medical experience. So that's the kind of writing that excites me. When I read an Amitav Ghosh, he's got his anthropology and sociology nailed. He's done his homework. The writing or art, for it to have depth, and there are different ways in which you can achieve that depth. Sometimes it's by immersion, right? In some traditional disciplines. But for literature more broadly, I would say that you need to look outside and you need to work with others. And I think that's becoming increasingly the case in any discipline. So that's my answer.
Fair enough.
Can I jump in? Just for
Yes.
one thing I wanted to share. Nalanda University is one of our oldest university, right? So when I was studying about the art history part of it, so it says the artists were not chosen just based on their level of creative skill. They had to be researchers, they had to be like scientists, they need to know the history of the story, what they were carving on sculptures or painting. So they had to learn 16 different subjects, and then end result would be a art. Right from the music, okay? So what are the musical instruments? What are the names of the instruments? When was it played? What was the event? And all those things. And so art, like today's time in the college or school, you have a painting department, you have a sculpture department, you have a graphic department. They didn't have that. So I don't know why we lost that as our history. So it has to be art in, like, the students, whoever are choosing art, need to know all the skills possible, which connects every like horizontal and vertical line. You cannot be just thinking, yes, I know how to paint and I'm an artist. No, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah, fair
So
enough.
that is what I wanted to bring to one point. Yeah, thank you.
No, thanks. Yeah, we've got 30 more minutes. I'm going to work around some student questions, which is some interesting one that's come up. And I want to get Sampriti's question out to Shobha and Mati, and whoever wants to respond to that. And then we want to talk a little bit more about the graduate skills. So Shobha, this very interesting question comes from Sampriti, and she says, I'm a 12th grade student. Arts is my passion, but I'm always deviated by the circumstances faced from the Indian mindset of the arts. And how do I really stand up for my passion? Any tips?
I didn't think that the mindset still existed. It existed during my time, I knew, but I thought we had really come far away from there. I know that when I was studying, I had finished my 12th, and my marks in the other subjects other than the sciences were better than the ones in the sciences. My parents still said that it's science that you have to pursue and not the arts, because somehow it was the ones who got the bad marks, or who could not get into the sciences, let me put it that way, who could not get into the sciences, that chose the arts. And I thought we had come a long way from there. But if it hasn't, I think you should just stand up for, like we've all been talking here, stand up for where your passion lies, and be the first one to change the mindset in your family, and give them the examples of 100,000 things that artists are doing today, and scientists who have turned artists, who are doing today. And I think that perhaps if it's your mother or your father, you probably have to have them sit them down and tell them why you are so passionate about why you are. Maybe that isn't coming through, and maybe that's why they are forcing you into the sciences. Yeah, Mati, I don't know. My son, for instance, he did his 12th standard, and he was all cut out to get into medicine. But he just wrote the IIT, the 5-year humanities course, just for a song, and he got in. and now he works for Penguin Random House in New York. He's an editor. So, had I said at that point that no, medicine is a better opportunity, this might not have happened. And so therefore one needs to sometimes, convince your parents or whoever it is that's telling you to do what they're doing. Yeah.
Drag them to career dialogues. Yes, Mati.
No, I don't know. I mean, I think Shobha sort of articulated it super well. Just to add a small thing to that, I think is that, I mean, in the arts, it's always going to be a fight for your position, right? In terms of your thought, your thing. So I think the start of it is this. So this is, I think, just in a way, I think, like you rightfully said, if you think that this is for you, to be able to convince someone is really important, right? And tomorrow you're going to be maybe making a film or writing a piece, and someone's going to be like, why did you do that? And you would have to argue that, right? So I think this is the start of many such arguments, and if you win in this first one, I'm sure that all of that will happen as well. So that's just a little note there. That's all.
Yeah, no, sounds good. We'll come back to you, Madhi. I've got one more question up for you. But Akila?
Well, I've already written this. This was the question I was responding to. I said, do your research. Go look up career pathways in literature and the arts, whatever arts you're interested in, and understand that you don't have to most of us don't go on to do anything that has to do with our undergraduate degrees. Further, in Mati's case in point, I'm back to it, but lots of people don't, so doing the arts can free you up to do a lot of different things in a lot of different fields. So do your research and attack the problem with strategy and logic. Fight this fight not on the basis of emotions. Unseating mindsets can only be done if you dismantle those mindsets logically. Don't do your research, do your homework.
Yeah, Akila, while I have you, I want to start this next round of questions as well, which I think would serve a lot of students listening in. So for any young graduate today, whether that's, the broader spectrum, and you could talk from a theater or writing angle, whether you're a writer, a musician, a composer, a filmmaker, you want to be a publisher, whatever that is, besides just all the academic background that they get, what do you think is going to be some of the key skills or attributes that they need to bring in to continue to serve broader in the space of literature and the arts? You did hint on curiosity in one of your earlier things, but it's really what could be the other skills that they need to strongly come out with?
I know I was the one who said curiosity is important, but I do want to emphasize that skills are very important. If you don't have those, it doesn't matter how you acquire them. You can acquire them sometimes by learning on the job, but just working at something, having the discipline to work at something and pick up the skills. So you've gone beyond a novice into an expert. That's crucial for any field. So that mindset, right? That meta awareness, perhaps. I'm actually interested in this as a researcher, metacognition, awareness of how you're learning and learning how to learn effectively, right? Being on that journey. So I can use the metaphor of acting for this, for you to understand why this is so important. And Mati, I hope you get back to the stage at some point, Mati. But I know you're happy right now, but still, we want you back. But one of the things is that if you're an actor, you have to be completely immersed in your role, but you have to be completely aware of what's going on the stage. So you have to know that, there will be spotlights marked. You have to go stand in that space at a particular time. So you can never lose yourself so totally that you aren't aware of what is happening around you on the stage. So you can't lose yourself so totally in the character, right? And this is the path to expertise. Always being alive to the opportunities that the moment presents, and that double track. One part of you is traversing the journey of the character. The other is just looking around and making sure that you avail yourself of every opportunity, and you give other people their opportunities too, because you're working in a team. So this attitude is what you need to cultivate towards anything you do. I don't know if this really answers your question, but it's an important thing.
It does.
Because that journey is really both about developing skills, but also being very aware how you learn, how you progress, and just making sure that you don't stagnate, that you keep going down that path of more evolution, more understanding.
Yeah. Sumitra, if we can come to you a bit about some of your thoughts on, what would be the kind of skills that you think young graduates will need to develop as they progress into the creative industries more broadly?
I think what Akila said is actually super important. So I'm just going to say that this idea of awareness, of a meta awareness. You think of the arts as transformative. Of course they are, but as a very popular musician put it, he makes other people cry by singing a particular song. If he starts crying himself, what happens? So it's this ability to actually effect something, but at the same time having the cognition to be on, to have another parallel pathway. I think that's very important. The second thing that is probably less emphasized, but it is cross-domain thinking. See, even though the arts is a very, very specialist occupation, you'll be surprised when we really think through any art. You keep cognizant of multiple things at the same time, and that I think that the idea that creativity is really uses a lot of analogy, metaphor, connections. I think this is this. Bringing that into the classroom. We actually do that at Krea with our course called Creative Expressions, where we use cross-domain thinking very consciously, relating multiple domains. And I think that is important. And then, as I put in a response to one of the questions, see, I think there is, technology, even in independent, depending upon where you are in time, different kinds of technology, but definitely technology skills today. And here is where, digital inclusion. So let's not just make technology into this, hugely democratizing space, which, everybody gets equal. No, along with technology, you've got to think about digital inclusion and social responsibility. So when you're developing awareness of how to use technology, you can't just develop that awareness. You've got to be aware of, especially in a country like India, what that includes and what that excludes. So social awareness and consciousness of positionalities. So these are all, I think, aside from the very particular skills that are also very important. And then, of course, you've come to the market and to commerce, and that's a whole area in itself. Mm. So that's where I would say.
Shobha, do you want to add?
Yeah, Kala, I just wanted to say, of course, what Akhila and Sumitra have said is absolutely necessary. But I'm coming to something more fundamental, and this is what I find when people apply to us for jobs as editors or as even an internship position, and I find that so many youngsters today are not strong with language or with communication. And I find this, I don't know whether it's a result of texting so much and using short forms, or the inability to write really long paragraphs which contain two solid, clear thought ideas. It's just so absent. We have people sending in resumes and applications for positions which would not even have done enough research to address the person that the application is supposed to reach. And I think maybe I'm old school, I don't know. My hair definitely reflects old school. But to, when you write in for a job application, we came from the days of the typewriter, and the manner in which we were taught to address and conclude a letter. And I know that all that degree of formality is out of the window or out of the door, but a basic formal letter, I don't know whether we don't teach it in schools, but even as I read the application, the covering letter, I'm not even interested in looking at the resume, you see. So I think this is one fundamental thing. And if you tell me, if you're applying to me as not as an editor, but as a a graphic designer, then let your resume reflect your creativity or your a skill even, you know, if in the resume itself, I'm finding 5 flaws, basic flaws of graphic design, I'm not even interested in seeing all the projects that you have completed, you see. So this, at least to the youngsters who are gathered here, this is something I would really, really stress on, that if you're not confident of your letter, please run it by somebody else before you do it. Your piece of communication reflects who you are and to a large extent what you're capable of.
Yeah.
All right. So
Yeah,
that's my 2 bits. Yeah.
So I know I saw a question come up there. Oh, would love to do an internship with Krea Details. So whoever asked that question, you know what you have to do. Get your covering letter right.
Yes,
Get your cover letter right. Get the purpose of your internship right. And I want to just ask finally this, Mati, and I want to move a little bit to Sumitra and Akila to talk a bit about literature and arts. So Mati, your organization, a lot of young people who would be looking to join, let's say, Stray Factory, want to contribute in different levels. So what's it that you're looking for in young writers or filmmakers or researchers for film? What is it that you're looking for in young graduates?
I think, I mean, I couldn't agree with Shobha more, in terms of, how when I read an email and then you want to know whether you want to work with that person. I think it's safe to say that nobody here is making like $1 million. So like, you're at least the people that you want to work with, you want to know they took the time, they care, they want something. So then it tells you that there is some genuine interest, right? So I think, it also comes, I think, possibly my generation, I think, and a little bit which has seeped into this, the current generation as well. There's definitely a sense of entitlement, I think, and I speak for a lot of my definite peers as well. There's a thing that, I thought this, so it should happen, right? And it's I don't think it comes from entitlement per se, but it's just that instant thing of like, I have it, it should happen. And I meet a lot of kids, now especially, whose skill sets are insane. Like, like they're 20 and they know how to kill Adobe, Photoshop to like editing tools. They know every single tool. But then I ask them, what's your idea? It's like total close, right? It's just impossible for, to communicate that idea. So I think writing, even though we're in such a visual culture all the time and everyone's Insta game is on point all the time and, GIF game is killer. But like when it comes to write me like one paragraph, it's like, okay, where are the words? I think still we do have, the need for words. So I think I definitely look for something that's simple. So if someone can communicate the idea simply, it's great. And second, definitely the person has to be a good person. I mean, in the sense that if I even sense some level of aggression or I sense some set of like, this Netflix has this thing, but creative jerks not allowed. If I sense that person is even a little bit like, going to go off into their own world and they think this thing, I'm off, because I'd much rather work with somebody who I can have a better time with. So I think these 2 things, everything else is secondary. Then of course the voice and all the other things that I spoke about. But primarily, if they can convey their idea well, the communication is great, and they're just good people, I think. And I think this is what I'm largely looking for.
Sure, thanks. We're going to come to like 3 critical questions. We've got about 10 more minutes. I know there's one question about what are specific. Yes?
Sorry, quickly, I just want to add this. All of you who are here, who are even sending out applications, please be very careful about whom. If you're applying to 10 publishing houses, for instance, for an internship, make sure you've got the right publisher's name to the right publisher's address. and you can't write me a mail, dear Krea Details, and then say, we loved your book, which was published by somebody else. Yeah, so you please be watchful of that, I mean, even though we know that you applied to have the same letter sent out to 15 people, at least take care that whom you're CCing stuff on. Thank you.
We've often seen a lot of cases where the resume is saved in another company's name and it's sent to another company. So there's all sorts of instances. Having worked in career services, we kind of see this. And I know you're talking about a lot of that experience, Shobha. There's a couple of important questions here, and I want to kind of address this. One question is about, what are the specific career opportunities in literature and arts? And that's really what we've tried to show in this panel, that you could, whether that's across the publishing, whether that's filmmaking, in all sorts of theater and other places. But I could maybe just spend a quick 30 seconds talking about the kind of, for instance, the jobs that our students from the literature and the arts have got in the summer. Maybe that will give you an indication. So we've got students placed in, let's say, in a dance company where they are writing the entire social media. So this is, a fabulous company called Atakalari, who are based in Bangalore. They're one of the prominent contemporary dance companies. And, they have positions where students will be actually working with the dance theater company, writing the social medias and literature and all of that. We have students in, let's say, a short video app like Josh, which is a company where, again, they're working with content developers. So the role of the intern or the student is to work with multiple language content developers. We have students placed in, let's say, an organization like Social Beat, which is one of India's fastest growing digital marketing companies, where students are placed in, again, language content development, but also looking at what kind of strategic insights can help writing content. So that's one. And we, of course, have students going to Stray Factory to work with Mati, which is exciting for us this summer. But again, they're going to be working on film research and those kind of areas. We have students who are majoring, let's say, in literature and psychology, who are going to be working with, another publishing house. We have a student who's very passionate about creative writing and especially children's content writing, and she's going to be working with another house that purely focuses on child content. So it's all sorts of organizations affiliated in the arts that our students are working across, whether that's in the business development, whether that's in content communication, whether that is in research. Again, working with, we just started talking to editing house like Scroll. So all these kind of organizations and affiliated are where students are working in. Recently also with Street Art India, Street Art India is doing a fabulous job with converting public spaces. We have a student who's so passionate about the visual arts that she's going to be working on looking at what are some of the social issues that street art could kind of bring to in public spaces. So really, students who are listening into it, the opportunities are enormous because of the cross-disciplinary backgrounds with which some of these students come from. And it's interesting that one of the students who's actually going to start the internship with Mati is not even a literature arts student, but it's an economics major. And as a, and it's got a completely different bent of mind when it comes to that. So it's again, it's not that if you've taken literature and arts, you kind of have to work only in that realm, and it allows for you to collaborate and work across multiple domains. I'm happy to stay back for 30 minutes to talk a little bit more on what's happening in that angle. But here is one question, Akila, and I'd like you to kind of address this, which is just about literature and arts program at Krea, and if you can just talk a little bit about what does it actually entail, to just give a sense of, for a student, of what is it to study literature and arts in an interdisciplinary or a multidisciplinary setting.
Here, I'm not going to be a very good advertiser of the major. I would rather like to think actually that every major in Krea is going to afford opportunities of interdisciplinarity, and that literature and arts will play a part in every student's life, as they do right now. Because we have courses on writing, courses on literature and the arts that all students take. And we have a number of cross-listed courses with other disciplines. For instance, right now, there's an environmental communications course being taught by a professor from the English department and somebody in environmental studies who has a more database, science-based approach. So they're teaching that course together. But what I will say about the literature and arts major is that one beautiful advantage the humanities and the arts have is that you don't have to have this sort of sequential structure. We can teach skill sets, students can take courses out of order. So, we have a system in which you choose a major and so on and so forth, right? So we don't have the sort of sequential scaffolding of courses. So what we've tried to do with both global arts and with the literature major is to create a sort of a bedrock of required courses that you must take. You don't necessarily have to take them in the same order. They're modular in that sense. So you build on, so you learn methods in literature, you understand genre, you understand literary and artistic movements. And so often we've tried to make, because we have a joint major, we've tried to take a sort of a joint approach to courses. So right now I'm teaching a course on literary and artistic movements. So those span both the entire spectrum. So I have a little bit of film, I have some visual arts, and I have literature as well. So what we're teaching students is to recognize the porosity of boundaries between literature and the arts. And then with those required courses, we're building a sort of a scaffolding on which they take advanced courses, upper level courses, elective courses. So the basic courses teach them those tools. What we're trying to emphasize overall is a global idea of literature and the arts, not just based in Europe and America, right? Not saying that everything starts with Aristotle, everything starts with Shakespeare, but root ourselves in South Asia, and also but still maintain a global perspective. So you might you might read a haiku with a khayal and then with a sonnet, right, in some course, and talk very specifically about literary form or musical form with each of those, right? So, but we're unseating this notion that everything starts and ends in the Western metropolis. Okay, so that's a big goal for us, and we try to emphasize this by in our theory courses, which include some practice, our practice courses, which include some theory. And finally, I'll say that one of the big things we're very aware of is how both the arts and literature are related to technology. So, we have an emphasis on what is called digital humanities. That's a field we're trying to grow that, about the role that technology can play in the fields of literature and the arts, and the burgeoning opportunities on different kinds of platforms, not just the traditional ones. So I think I'll just stop there. And we have a media lab at Krea and a Center for Writing and Pedagogy that can assist us and support us in giving students these different experiences along with internships. And yeah.
That's great. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I know that's a bit of a, how we teach it being slightly different. I want to just, go this one final question around, and there's been a very interesting question, which one of the students wants to give to parents and educators watching this, asking if there is one myth or stereotype you want the panelists to bust about literature and arts. What would that be? So if I can just go around and say, are there some myths to bust here? Do you want to go, Sumitra?
Yeah, one myth to bust. I think the myth that I'd really like to bust is to say that even someone who's devoted to doing art for art's sake, that you can do it disconnected from the world that is around you. That I think fundamentally, the way we practice art, and this is historically true, that it is typically there are two responses. One is in shaping the self, and the second thing is in responding to what is around us. And so I think if you keep that in mind, then if we look at the possibilities for the arts in today's world, you could really see that it's a very, very broad canvas. So that's the one thing that I'd like to say, Kala.
Thank you. Shobha?
The myth that I would like to burst is to say that there is no money in art. There's fabulous money in art. But in order for us to make fabulous money in art, you have to approach art not just simply with passion, but also as a person who knows to market oneself or herself, and to make a business out of it. And there is ample money in art. I mean, I can give you a name in every possible art form, whether it's performing arts or it's literature, that there are people who are laughing every month on their way to the bank.
Agree. I must here also say that one of the internships that we have for summer for students is in this company called Artree India. And Artree India is an arts investment company. So they have the world's most richest people who want to invest in art, and Artree India focuses on that. And, you know, a couple of our students are going to be, 4 students are actually going to be interning with Artree India, looking at valuations in art, and looking at, you know, the prices, and looking at where some of the high net worth individuals investing in art are. So it's interesting what you could actually do with an you know, interest in this field as well. Devika, anything that you think we need to, any myth that parents have which we need to bust?
See, the myth is a lot of the parents, or in general, people think you need to have good connects and you need to have good connects to sell your art. But I would like to, you know, change that, because you can make your own brand. You are a brand, and you can develop towards that and have a good life.
Thank you. Matias, I know you very, very deeply was typing on that sci-fi question, which was very interesting. Any myth that you think we need to bust about maybe the filmmaking space?
I think the idea of geniuses, I think it's a little overrated. I think we always look at these, of course, there are these savants and all of that, but, you know, generally we attribute too much to someone being a prodigy and being a genius. I think anybody can outwork anybody. And I genuinely believe that. So I think you just have to work hard and smart, and then you can be as good as. So even the people that we like idolize in sport, like like a Sachin, Dhoni, to A.R. Rahman, to all. I don't necessarily think all of them are geniuses per se. They just work really hard as well. So I think just for the parents as well, that, or even the kids, because I think often, like, I meet a lot of directors who come with a lot of like, oh my God, how am I ever going to be like the masters of cinema and all of that? That's fine. That can happen later, but you can outwork anybody. And I think that's maybe something like to say.
Fabulous. Thank you. Thank you so much. What an exciting 90 minutes. I know there's a few other questions around, you know, what kind of minors complemented. Pretty much, if you've heard all our panelists, I mean, it could be anything on plate that's actually offered to you, whether that's technology, whether that's economics, sociology. So you could pretty much combine the whole space, because from what you hear today, it's not about literature and arts being a subject, but more, you know, the skill, the ability for you to think in a certain manner, and the ability of communication, expression, all of that. And it doesn't matter what career you tend to choose, but it's more, I think, a skill at the end of the day. And where I think it's about saying, do you know how to operate a laptop or a computer? That's a technical skill, and you think that's basic. We think that being part of what the literature and the arts majors, or what strands that people like Akila and Sumitra bring into Krea, will kind of be very important, irrespective of what you want to create out of your life from there. So, you know, thank you so much. We're so delighted, 100+ continuing there. Thank you so much for staying with us. I'm happy to stay on if you have some specific questions on careers, but to our panel, thank you so much. I mean, the energy, you know, throughout, I would say, amazing. Learned a lot. Thank you so much for taking your time off to be with our young students, anxious parents and counselors.